The ruins of Prime stretched endlessly under three pale suns, moved through the broken streets like a ghost, her silver-blue skin covered in dust and dried blood. The bioluminescent marks on her arms, once bright symbols of her warrior caste, had faded to dull gray. She barely remembered what it felt like to shine. 3 months had passed since the fall. 3 months since the warships tore through the sky and burned everything she knew. 3 months since her people loaded their ships and left without her. She climbed over rubble that used to be the Central Academy, searching for anything useful. Food was scarce. Water was scarcer. Most days, she wondered why she bothered surviving at all. Failed warriors had no place in society. They certainly had no place in the universe. The memory haunted her every waking moment. The battle, the screaming, the soldiers advancing through smoke and fire, her instructor's voice, sharp and commanding, ordering her forward, her feet frozen to the ground, her hands shaking too badly to hold her weapon, the disappointment in her commander's eyes before the blast hit him. Shook her head, trying to clear the thoughts. She needed to focus on finding supplies. The old storage facilities near the West District might still have. A sound stopped her. Engines. Not different. Lower pitched. She ducked behind a collapsed wall and watched as strange vehicles rolled through the street. They were blocky and crude compared to designs, covered in odd symbols and colors. Humans, the weak species from the outer rim, what were they doing here? Stayed hidden, observing. The humans moved in small groups, checking buildings. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that looked almost primitive. One of them, a male with dark hair, stopped and gestured to his team. They were searching for something, or someone. She should leave, now, before they spotted her, The building groaned, looked up just as the ceiling beam she disturbed earlier gave way. She tried to move, but her weakened body was too slow. The rubble came down hard, pinning her legs. Pain exploded through her body. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Darkness crept at the edges of her vision. Good, she thought. This was better than starving, better than the shame. Let it end here. But the darkness didn't take her. Instead, she heard voices, human voices, getting closer. Sergeant, over here. Hands touched her, checking her pulse. Eyes fluttered open. The dark-haired human male was kneeling beside her, his face concerned. He said something in his language, then switched to broken. You alive? We help. No, whispered in the trade language. Leave me. The human ignored her. He called to his team and they began lifting the rubble. Wanted to fight them, to tell them she wasn't worth saving, but her body wouldn't obey. The pain was too much. Stop, she managed. I'm nothing, failed warrior, let me die. The human male met her eyes. His expression was strange. Not pity, not disgust, something else. No one dies today, he said firmly in the trade language. Hold on. They pulled her free and loaded her onto a stretcher, drifted in and out of consciousness as they carried her through the ruins. She caught glimpses of the human camp, tents, medical stations, survivors of different species being treated. It made no sense. Why waste resources on the weak? When she woke again, she was in a medical tent. Soft lights, clean air, the scent of antiseptic. A human female in white clothing was checking monitors beside her bed, tried to sit up but her body protested. Easy, the medic said gently. You're safe now. Where am I? Terran Defense Coalition Field Hospital. You had 3 broken ribs, a fractured leg, severe dehydration and malnutrition. Your lucky sergeant found you. Lucky, the word felt like a joke, turned her head away. Why did you save me? The medic paused. Because you needed help, that's what we do. Over the next few days, learned the humans had come as part of a humanitarian mission. They were searching for survivors, establishing refugee camps, providing aid. The concept baffled her. These were resources that could go to strong warriors. Instead, humans spent them on broken civilians and failures like her. Visited every day. He brought her food, taught her basic human words and asked questions about culture. At first, refused to engage. She was hostile, cold, waiting for him to give up and abandon her like everyone else had. But he didn't give up. "Why do you keep coming back?" she finally asked on the fifth day. "I'm not your responsibility." Sat in the chair beside her bed. "You remind me of soldiers I served with, good people who got dealt a bad hand. They needed someone to believe in them when they couldn't believe in themselves." "Your people are weak," said bitterly. "You waste time on feelings and failures. That's why our superior warriors—" "Were," corrected gently, "were superior warriors. Your people lost the war too, and they left you behind." The words hit harder than any weapon. Felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Warriors didn't cry, even failed ones. "We don't abandon our own," continued. "That's not weakness, that's strength. You don't understand. In my culture, if you fail in combat, you're defective, worthless. I froze during my first battle. I watched my entire unit die because I couldn't move. I couldn't fight. I was supposed to be a sentinel, an elite warrior, and I failed." Was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled up his sleeve, showing her a long scar running up his forearm. "First real combat mission. I was 20 years old, ambush in the Deneb sector. My best friend was hit right next to me. I panicked, forgot my training, nearly got my whole squad killed." He met her eyes. "But my commander didn't leave me behind. He helped me work through it, taught me that fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." "I'm not human." "No," smiled slightly, "but maybe that's not the only way to be strong." A commotion outside interrupted them. Alarms blared. Soldiers ran past the tent. Sat up, her combat instincts awakening despite everything. "What's happening?" Stood, checking his weapon. "Stay here, we'll handle it." But was already pulling herself out of bed, ignoring her protesting injuries. Through the tent opening, she could see smoke rising from the eastern perimeter. The familiar sound of plasma fire. Her blood ran cold. As she whispered, looked at her, "You sure?" "I'd know that sound anywhere. They're attacking the camp." The sergeant tapped his communicator, relaying the information. Then he turned back to, "Can you walk?" "I can fight." "That's not what I asked." Stood, wobbling but determined. "I won't hide while others fight, not again." Studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but you follow my lead, understand?" She nodded. He handed her a small plasma pistol, and together they moved toward the sound of battle. Heart pounded. Her hands shook. The memories of her failure threatened to overwhelm her. But this time she had someone beside her, someone who believed she could stand. That had to count for something. Didn't it? The eastern perimeter burned. Moved beside through the chaos, her borrowed weapon feeling strange in her hands. Human weapons were heavier than designs, less elegant, but they had a solid reliability that she was starting to understand. Raiders poured through a breach in the camp's defenses. Their armor gleamed black and red, their weapons crackling with energy. His breath caught in her throat. These were the same soldiers who had destroyed her world, the same ones who had killed her unit while she stood frozen. "Defensive positions," shouted to his team. He glanced at, "You good?" She wanted to say yes, wanted to be the warrior she was trained to be, but her hands were shaking and her vision was starting to blur at the edges. I don't know." Didn't judge her. He simply nodded and positioned himself slightly ahead of her. "Stay close. Fire when you have a clear shot. Don't think about it, just do it." The battle erupted around them. Human soldiers fought with a coordination that surprised. They weren't as individually skilled as warriors, but they moved as one unit, covering each other, communicating constantly. When one fell back to reload, another stepped forward. When someone was wounded, two others immediately moved to extract them. They fought like a single organism. A soldier broke through the line, heading straight for a medical tent full of civilians. Saw him raising his weapon, saw the refugees cowering inside. Her training screamed at her to move, to act, to stop him. But her feet wouldn't move. Her finger froze on the trigger. The same paralyzing fear from that terrible battle gripped her heart. Fired, dropping the soldier before he could shoot. He didn't look at with disappointment. He just kept fighting, kept protecting. The raid lasted 20 minutes. The retreated when human reinforcements arrived, leaving behind damaged equipment and several wounded raiders. The humans immediately began treating their wounded, enemy soldiers included, watched in disbelief as a human medic worked to save a fighter who had been trying to kill them moments before. "Why?" she asked after the fighting ended. "Why save your enemy?" "Because the fighting's over," replied, checking his weapon. "He's not our enemy anymore. He's just wounded." Sank to the ground, her injuries screaming and her spirit broken completely. "I froze again. I couldn't move. I'm exactly what my people said I was, defective, useless." Sat down beside her. He didn't speak immediately, just sat there in the dust and smoke. Finally, he said, "You know what I see when I look at you? A failure. I see someone who's been through hell and is still standing. I see someone who got out of a hospital bed, injured and exhausted because she refused to hide. That's not nothing. I didn't fight. You were there, that's the first step." He looked at the burning perimeter. "You think I don't get scared, that any of us don't. Fear is normal. It's what you do with it that matters." Over the following weeks, slowly recovered. Her body healed faster than her mind, but both improved. She watched the humans constantly, trying to understand them. They were so different from her people. She observed them during their off-duty hours. They played cards and laughed at jokes. They talked about their families back on Earth. A soldier named the team medic taught her a human game called chess. Another named showed her pictures of his daughter and made terrible puns that somehow made her smile despite herself. They included her in their conversations even though she was an outsider, even though she'd frozen during the battle, even though she had nothing to offer them. Continued working with her every day. He taught her human hand-to-hand combat techniques, different from the elegant styles she'd learned. Human fighting was practical, sometimes brutal, but effective. It focused on survival rather than perfect form. "In combat, we're taught to flow like water," explained during one training session. "Every movement must be precise, beautiful, deadly." "And if you can't be perfect," asked, blocking her strike, "then you failed." "That's stupid." He swept her legs out from under her, but not hard. "Combat isn't about being perfect. It's about adapting, surviving. Winning doesn't care how pretty your moves look." Stood up, breathing hard. "My instructors would call that barbaric." "Your instructors abandoned you," said bluntly. "Maybe their way wasn't as superior as they thought." The words stung because they were true. Attacked again, this time with real anger behind her strikes. Defended, letting her work through her emotions. When she finally exhausted herself, he handed her a water container. "Better," he said. "You're thinking less, fighting more." One evening brought her a package. Inside was a weapon, but not a standard human rifle. It had been modified, adjusted for physiology. Lighter grip, adjusted sights, energy output calibrated for her strength. "And I worked on it," explained. "Thought you might want something that fits better." Held the weapon, feeling tears she couldn't stop. "Why do you keep doing this? Why do you care?" "Because you're part of the team now. We take care of our own." "I'm not one of you." "You are if you want to be." The words opened something in his chest, a feeling she'd thought dead, hope. But hope was dangerous. It could be taken away. That truth came crashing down when the camp received a transmission, was called to the command center, where the human officers were gathered around a holographic display. She recognized the symbol on the transmission immediately. Military. "We thought you should hear this," the human commander said gently. The message played. A admiral, speaking in formal military language. He confirmed what had feared. All military assets had been evacuated to the outer colonies. Prime was considered lost. No further rescue operations would be conducted. The planet and any remaining were considered casualties of war. "They're not coming back," whispered. "I'm sorry," the commander said. Walked out of the command center in a daze. She made it to the edge of the camp before her legs gave out. She sat there, staring at the ruins of her world, feeling completely and utterly alone. Found her there an hour later. He sat down beside her without speaking. "They left me," finally said. "Not because they couldn't find me, because I wasn't worth finding." "Their loss," replied. "How can you say that? I'm a failure, a defective warrior who can't fight." "You're a survivor. You're brave enough to keep trying even when everything tells you to give up. That's worth more than being a perfect soldier." Looked at him. "Do you really believe that?" "Yeah, I do." He stood and offered his hand. "Come on," making something he calls comfort food. Apparently it's a human tradition when someone's having a hard day. Took his hand and let him pull her up. As they walked back to camp, she realized something. She was starting to believe him, not completely, not yet, but starting. Maybe perfect warriors weren't the only ones who deserved to exist. Maybe there was room in the universe for the broken ones too, if they had someone willing to fight for them. 2 months after her rescue, stood in the human command center wearing a modified coalition uniform. The fabric felt strange against her skin, nothing like the ceremonial armor she'd once worn with pride. But it fit. That was something. "You understand what you're requesting?" Commander Park asked, studying her across the desk. She was a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Yes, ma'am," replied in careful human language. She'd been practicing. "I wish to remain with Sergeant's unit, as auxiliary support. You have no formal military standing anymore. Your people have abandoned Prime. Technically, you're a refugee." "I'm aware," met the commander's gaze. "But I know this planet better than anyone. I can help. I want to help." Commander Park looked at who stood beside. "You're vouching for her?" "Yes, ma'am. She's proven herself capable. Her knowledge of technology and terrain is invaluable." The commander considered for a long moment. "All right, provisional assignment. You'll serve as cultural advisor and scout, but you follow orders, understand? This isn't the military. We do things differently here." "I'm learning that, ma'am," said quietly. And she was. Every day brought new surprises about how humans operated. They held briefings where junior soldiers could question officers' decisions. They promoted based on skill and dedication, not genetic caste. They valued creativity over rigid obedience. In society, would have been discarded at birth if her genetic markers hadn't been perfect. Here, humans celebrated diversity. The medic had a prosthetic leg from an old injury, had failed his first pilot certification twice before passing, even had been rejected from elite special forces before finding his place in standard operations. They were all imperfect, and they were all valued. His first official mission came a week later. Intelligence had detected activity near the old Sentinel Academy, the very place where had trained. They needed reconnaissance, and knew the facility's layout better than any map could show. The squad assembled in the briefing room, stood at the front marking locations on a holographic display. Beside him were the core team members, always calm and steady, grinning despite the danger. The tech specialist who could hack almost anything, and now the outsider trying to find her place. "Our objective is simple," explained. "Get in, gather intelligence on what they are doing, and get out without being detected. Will guide us through the facility. Questions?" Raised her hand. "If we encounter resistance, avoid if possible. We're not equipped for a full assault. This is reconnaissance only." They moved out at dawn. The journey to the academy took 6 hours through dangerous terrain, led them along paths she'd run 1,000 times during training. She showed them where to avoid sensor grids, where to find cover, where the ground was stable enough to support their weight. "You really know this place," commented, following her across a narrow bridge. "I spent 4 years here," replied. "Every centimeter was drilled into us. The instructor said a true sentinel should be able to navigate the academy blindfolded." "Sounds intense." "It was meant to be. Only the strongest survived the training." She paused. "I almost didn't make it. I was always the weakest in my class." "But you graduated right?" asked. "Technically, but everyone knew I didn't belong. I was too soft, too emotional, not cold enough to be a perfect warrior." Glance back at her. "Their loss, those emotions make you human. Well, you know what I mean." As they approached the academy, felt her chest tighten. The massive structure loomed ahead, half destroyed but still imposing. She'd spent the worst years of her life here, being shaped into a weapon, being told she wasn't good enough. "You okay?" asked quietly. "I will be." They entered through a collapsed section of the outer wall. Inside, the academy was a graveyard, broken training equipment, shattered weapons, dried blood on the walls from the final battle. Hands began to shake. "Stay focused," reminded her gently. They moved deeper into the facility, guided them past security systems she'd once helped maintain, through corridors she could navigate in her sleep. The muscle memory was still there, even if everything else had changed. In the central hall, they found what they were looking for. Soldiers and technicians working frantically around something massive. A weapon of some kind being excavated from a hidden chamber beneath the floor. Activated her scanner, recording everything. "That's not standard tech. What is that?" Blood ran cold as she recognized the design. "That's a planet killer. A weapon my people were developing in secret." She felt sick. "We were building that. We were going to use it." "To win the war?" asked. "To eliminate entire worlds." His voice shook. "The instructors used to talk about it. They said it was our final solution, our way to prove superiority over all other species." The humans exchanged glances, broke the silence. "Well, that's terrifying. We need to report this immediately." But before they could move, alarms blared. Soldiers began running toward their position. Someone had detected them. "Run," ordered. They sprinted through the corridors, soldiers in pursuit. Plasma fire scorched the walls around them. Training kicked in, guiding them through shortcuts and hidden passages. They were almost to the exit when a blast sealed their primary escape route. "This way," shouted, taking them through the dormitory wing. She knew another way out, but it meant running past her old quarters, past the memorial wall where her instructors' names were carved, past all the memories she'd tried to forget. They burst into the dormitory hall and steps faltered. Everything was exactly as she remembered. The bunks where she'd slept, the lockers where she'd kept her gear, the training scores posted on the wall, her name always at the bottom of the list. Grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. They made it outside and ran for the extraction point. The transport was already incoming, picking them up just as reinforcements arrived. As they lifted off, watched the academy grow smaller below them. "We got what we needed," said, checking her data recorder. "This intelligence is solid." Back at base, they debriefed with Commander Park. The information about the planet killer sent shockwaves through command. If they activated that weapon, they could destroy entire colonies. "Good work," the commander told them. "Your knowledge was crucial to this mission's success." "Thank you, ma'am," but felt hollow inside. She'd helped, yes, but she'd also learned the truth about her people. They hadn't just been defending themselves. They'd been building weapons of genocide. That night found her sitting alone outside the barracks, staring at the stars. "Rough day," he said, sitting beside her. "My people were monsters," whispered. "We always acted superior, but we were planning to commit genocide. Your leaders were planning that, not you. I was training to serve them, to follow their orders without question." But you didn't, pointed out. You're here now helping prevent that weapon from being used. You're choosing a different path. Looked at him. Do you think people can really change? That we can be different from what we were made to be? Smiled slightly. I think you're living proof that they can. The emergency briefing happened at dawn. Commander Park's face was grim as she addressed the assembled soldiers. Intelligence confirms they are accelerating their timeline. They plan to move the planet-killer weapon within 48 hours. Once it's off-world, we lose our chance to destroy it. Murmurs rippled through the room. Squad sat in the front row with among them. She felt the weight of every eye that glanced her way. This was her people's weapon, her people's sin. Command is scrambling reinforcements, Park continued, but they won't arrive in time. We have two options. Wait for backup and risk the weapon being moved, or strike now with what we have. That's suicide, someone said. We don't have the numbers for an assault on that facility. Stood up, every head turned toward her. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to speak. I can get us inside. The security systems, the layout, the defensive positions. I know all of it. If we move fast, we can plant demolition charges before they know we're there. It's still a huge risk, Park said. We'd be going in undermanned against a fortified position. The risk of doing nothing is worse, replied. If they move that weapon, they could destroy entire worlds, billions of lives. Stood beside her. I support the plan. We go in fast, complete the objective, and extract. It's risky, but it's doable. The room debated for 20 minutes. Finally, Commander Park made the decision. We go tonight. Your squad takes point, guides. Everyone else provides support and covers the extraction. Dismissed. The squad spent the day preparing, checking weapons, reviewing plans, worked with on the technical aspects of destroying the weapon. They'd need to overload the power core, which meant accessing the command systems deep inside the facility. This is going to be close, said, studying the schematics. We'll have maybe 5 minutes to upload the virus and get clear before the whole thing goes critical. 5 minutes is enough, said with more confidence than she felt. As evening approached, found in the armory. She was checking her weapon for the third time, her hands shaking slightly. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. We can find another way. There is no other way, you know that. Yeah, he sat down beside her. But I also know this is going to be hard for you, going back there, facing all those memories. Set down her weapon. I've been running from my past since you found me. Maybe it's time to face it, to make something good come from all that pain. Just don't try to be a hero, said. We do this as a team, together, no sacrifices. I can't promise that. If it comes down to saving everyone or saving myself, what would you choose? Was quiet, they both knew the answer. The assault began at midnight. 2 carried the strike teams to the academy perimeter, led squad through the outer defenses, disabling sensors and avoiding patrols. They moved like shadows, silent and fast. Inside the facility, they encountered light resistance. They weren't expecting an attack, focused instead on their evacuation preparations. The squad eliminated sentries quietly, moving deeper into the complex. Memories assaulted her with every step. Here was the training hall where she'd learned to fight. There was the medical wing where they'd treated her injuries after particularly brutal sessions. Every corner held a ghost of who she used to be. They reached the central chamber where the planet killer sat like a massive metal heart. Technicians swarmed around it, making final preparations for transport. Counted at least 40 hostiles. Too many for a direct assault. We need a distraction, whispered. I'll create one, said. No, grabbed her arm. We stick together. But was already moving. She triggered a secondary alarm on the far side of the chamber, drawing half the forces away. As they scattered, the squad rushed forward, making for the command console while the others provided cover. They realized the deception quickly. They turned back, weapons blazing. The squad fought desperately, trying to buy time to upload the virus. "How long?" shouted, dropping behind cover as plasma fire tore through the air. 3 minutes, called back, her fingers flying over the console. 3 minutes felt like an eternity. Took a shot to the shoulder. His armor was scorched in a dozen places. They were running out of ammunition and options. Then the command console beeped. Looked up, her face pale. "We have a problem. The virus needs someone to manually initialize it from the core chamber. The radiation levels in there are lethal." Didn't hesitate, she stood up. "I'll do it." "No," grabbed her, pulling her back down as weapons fire passed overhead. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way, you know that." "Then I'm going with you." "If we both go, who'll lead the squad out?" They stared at each other, saw everything she needed to know in his eyes. He cared about her, truly cared. Not because she was useful or because she was a perfect warrior, just because she was. "I have to do this," she said softly. "This is my people's weapon, my people's sin. Let me be the one to end it." "You're not doing this alone." Before they could argue further, interrupted. "Wait, I think I can rig a remote trigger. We'd have maybe 90 seconds to get clear once it's activated, but someone needs to hold this position while I work." "Then that's what we do," decided. "Everyone defensive positions. We hold until it's done, then we run like hell." The next few minutes were chaos. The squad formed a perimeter around as she worked frantically. Soldiers pressed from all sides, fought beside her, training finally overcoming her fear. She wasn't fighting perfectly. She wasn't fighting beautifully, but she was fighting. "Got it," shouted. "Remote trigger is set, move." They ran. The facility's alarm screamed as the core began to overload. Soldiers scattered, abandoning their posts to escape. The squad sprinted through corridors, leading them toward the nearest exit. Behind them, the weapons core reached critical mass. The explosion lit up the night sky, a brilliant cascade of energy that consumed the academy in seconds. The blast wave caught them as they cleared the perimeter, throwing everyone to the ground. His ears rang, her vision blurred. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Through the ringing, she heard voices, felt hands lifting her. His face appeared above her, saying something she couldn't hear. She'd done it, they'd done it. The weapon was destroyed. As the extraction ships arrived and medics swarmed over the wounded squad, let herself feel something she hadn't felt in months. Pride. Not the cold, perfect pride of a warrior, but the warm, earned pride of someone who'd fought for something bigger than themselves. She'd found her purpose, and it wasn't being the perfect soldier her people had wanted. It was being part of something better, something human. Woke in the medical bay 3 days after the explosion. Her body ached everywhere, but she was alive. They were all alive. Was in the bed next to hers, his shoulder bandaged but healing. Sat in a chair nearby, telling terrible jokes to the nurses. Visited every few hours, updating on the mission's aftermath. The planet-killer weapon was completely destroyed. The forces had withdrawn from that sector. Came every day. Sometimes he talked. Sometimes he just sat there, keeping her company. On the 4th day, he brought news. "Commander Park wants to see you, when you're ready." "Am I in trouble?" "Opposite, actually," smiled. "You might want to hear this yourself." An hour later, stood in the command center, still a bit unsteady but walking. Commander Park studied her with those sharp eyes. "The Terran Defense Coalition is offering you full citizenship status," Park said without preamble. "You'd be the first non-human granted this honor. It comes with a commission as a Special Operations Advisor, full military standing." Felt her breath catch. "I don't understand why." "Because you earned it. You've proven yourself in combat, shown exceptional knowledge and skills, and you risked your life to protect innocent people from a weapon of mass destruction." Park's expression softened slightly. "You're exactly the kind of soldier we want in our ranks." I'm not a perfect warrior, I still freeze sometimes. I still get scared. Good, soldiers who aren't scared are either liars or idiots. Fear keeps you sharp. What matters is what you do despite the fear. Was about to respond when an aide rushed in looking flustered. Commander, urgent transmission. Diplomatic vessel requesting communication. They're asking for, the aide glanced at, they're asking for her specifically. The room went quiet, felt her whole body tense. After months of silence, now her people wanted to talk. The holographic display activated. A admiral appeared, his silver-blue skin marked with the complex patterns of high military rank. Recognized him. Admiral, one of the fleet commanders. I am Admiral of the Free Fleets, he said formally. We are seeking communication with the one known as, formerly of the Sentinel caste. I'm here, said stepping forward. The Admiral's eyes widened slightly when he saw her standing among humans, wearing a coalition uniform. We have heard reports of your actions, your destruction of the illegal weapons facility, your service to the human military. Why do you care? You left me to die. That was a mistake. The evacuation was chaotic. Many were left behind unintentionally. Liar's voice was cold. I was deemed defective, a failed warrior. Your reports said as much. You left me because I wasn't worth saving. The Admiral had the grace to look uncomfortable. The situation has changed. The people are desperate. We need allies. The humans have agreed to meet with us to discuss a potential alliance against the hegemony. And we want you to be part of the negotiations. You understand both cultures now. You could be a bridge between our peoples. He paused. You could come home, be reclaimed by your people, be a hero instead of a failure. The offer hung in the air, felt everyone watching her, waiting for her response. This was what she dreamed of months ago: acceptance, recognition, a chance to return to her people. But things had changed. She had changed. I need time to think, she said finally. The transmission ended. Commander Park dismissed everyone except the three of them stood in the quiet command center. What are you going to do? Park asked. I don't know, looked at. What would you do? It's not my choice to make. This is your life, your future. That night couldn't sleep. She walked through the quiet camp thinking about everything that had happened, everything she'd lost, everything she'd gained. She found herself at the memorial wall where the humans had carved the names of fallen soldiers. There were names there too, people the humans had tried to save but couldn't, people they remembered anyway, even though they weren't human. Can't sleep either. She turned to find approaching. He stood beside her, looking at the names. I keep thinking about what the Admiral said, about going home. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want anymore. When I was, everything was clear: be strong, be perfect, serve without question, but I failed at all of that. She touched her bioluminescent marks. Then I came here and humans taught me that failure isn't the end, that being imperfect is okay, that emotions make you stronger, not weaker. So you're torn between two worlds. Yes, she looked at him. They want me because I'm useful to them now, because I can help their political situation. But the humans, you saved me when I was worthless. You believed in me when I'd given up on myself. Was quiet for a long moment. You know what I think? I think you don't have to choose one or the other. You can be both, and human, or neither, or something completely new. How? By making your own path, he smiled slightly. You've already started doing that. You're not the warrior your people tried to make you, but you're not just another human soldier either. That's enough. The next morning, requested a meeting with both Commander Park and Admiral. When they gathered via holographic communication, she stood between the two worlds, literal and metaphorical. I've made my decision, she said. I will participate in the negotiations. I will help forge an alliance between humans but not as a warrior returned home, and not as just a human soldier. Then what? The Admiral asked. As something new, I propose a joint special operations unit, combining combat abilities with human tactical flexibility and compassion. A unit that proves our species can work together as equals, not as superior and inferior. Commander Park leaned forward. That's ambitious. Who would lead such a unit? I would, with Sergeant as my second-in-command. Looked at, who nodded his agreement. We've already proven we can work together. Let us prove that others can too. Admiral looked skeptical. The military command would never accept a former failed warrior as a leader. Then maybe military command needs to change, replied. You came to me because you're desperate, because you're losing the war. Your old ways aren't working. Maybe it's time to try something new. And if we refuse? Then I stay with the humans. They've already offered me citizenship and a commission. I don't need approval anymore, but you need me. You need what I represent, proof that your people can adapt, can change, can be better. The negotiations took weeks, stood before both human and leadership councils presenting her vision. She faced skepticism, prejudice, and doubt from both sides, but slowly people started listening. The turning point came when she brought his entire squad to testify, spoke about how cultural knowledge had saved lives, described her bravery during the weapon facility assault, presented data showing improved mission success rates when human and techniques were combined, and spoke simply and honestly about what had taught them. That strength comes in many forms. That failure is only the end if you let it be. That sometimes the bravest thing is asking for help. 3 months after the negotiations began, the joint unit was approved. It was called the Frontier Integration Corps, with one mission: prove that different species could work together as true equals. The original squad members all volunteered, as chief medical officer, as explosives specialist, as technical operations lead, and as second-in-command. They were joined by volunteers too, young warriors who'd been deemed imperfect by the old system, fighters who'd failed some test or shown too much emotion or questioned orders, the ones the old guard had wanted to discard. Stood before her new unit on their first day, looking at the mix of humans, and she saw hope in their eyes, purpose, the same things had helped her find. I know what it's like to be told you're not good enough, she told them, to be abandoned, to feel worthless, but I also know what it's like to find people who believe in you anyway, who see your value when you can't see it yourself. She looked at who smiled. We're going to build something new here, not human, but something better, something that takes the best from both our peoples and leaves the worst behind. It won't be easy. Some will call us traitors, others will call us fools, but we're going to prove them wrong. Bioluminescent marks glowed bright, brighter than they had in years. We're going to show the universe that strength isn't about being perfect. It's about standing back up every time you fall. It's about fighting for each other, about believing that everyone deserves a second chance. She raised her fist. The gesture was human, but the conviction behind it was universal. Who's with me? Every hand rose, human and together, broken warriors who'd found their way home, not to a planet or a people, but to each other. The abandoned alien warrior girl had found her future after all, and it was brighter than she'd ever imagined.